Hi, my name is Steve Hewitt, and this is another podcast from Steve Hewitt Ministries. This one's going to be different, a lot different, I think. First of all, I didn't make any notes. I haven't even thought exactly what I'm going to say because I wanted to just come out sort of raw and honest and share with you an event that happened in my life. One time only, but it was a miraculous event. It happened in 1985, so that's a long time ago, 40 years ago. I'm 70 years old now. That kind of tells you how old I was. I was pastor of a church, First Baptist Church in Versailles, Missouri. Before I tell you about what happened, I have to tell you first a little background. This church was a very large, prominent church right downtown in the center of Versailles, Missouri. I was going to look up how big Versailles, Missouri is. I don't know the population. It was big enough to have a Walmart, so that sort of gives you the idea of the town. It was right north of Lake of the Ozarks. It was a difficult church, is the best way I could say it. When I first was asked to be considered, for me to consider being their pastor, I went in what's called view of a call. And when I went, I was like, oh no, no, there's just no way. The building could easily hold 250, 300, but they were running 35 people. So when you look at a congregation in a building and you're looking down at 35 people surrounded by all this empty space of pews and chairs, it's incredibly discouraging. The church had gone through two splits. One had happened, I think, 7 years before, and the second split had happened just the year before. So two other Baptist churches had sprung up because of conflicts in this church. I knew that. I was aware of that. But I wasn't aware of what was causing the conflicts at the time. I remember preaching for them and then thinking, no, it's not for me. It's just not for me. All the way home, I kept going, boy, I wouldn't want to go to that church. I mean, there was no Sunday school class or small groups, which we call them now. There was no Sunday school class for anybody from birth to 35. So the 35 people that was there was between 35 and 70. And remember, I was about 30 years old myself. And so I'm like, I don't want to go to this old dead church. And all the way home, I kept telling myself that. But by the time I got home, it was about an hour and a half drive to where I had been pastoring in Leeton, Missouri. All of a sudden, I just felt God wanted me to go. That was the place I was supposed to be. So I told them I was considerate of it. So they had me come in view of a call. And I went to preach. They gave me a unanimous vote. And I accepted the call to be their pastor. Now, I was pretty naive back then. I didn't understand a lot of things. I never thought to ask, why did they just split? What happened? What's wrong with this church? Why are they so small? Why are they dying? I just felt called to go. Pastor Wayne Isgriggs was the one who invited me, and Brother Wayne is still alive. I follow him on Facebook. And I remember years later asking him why in the world he recommended me to this church that had had two splits and was dying. But nevertheless, there I was. Now, here's what the problem was. It turned out there was this couple in the church. This couple had a lot of money and a lot of influence in town. And they were running the church. He was chairman of the deacons. He was chairman of the pulpit committee looking for a pastor. He was the moderator that managed the monthly business meetings for the church. And he had several other titles. He was a church treasurer. And so this guy literally ran the church. And he had an old retired minister who didn't want to be full-time, but he had him as supply pastor. And they had gone like 9 months. And they had not been looking at anybody to be their pastor. Because he was chairman of the pulpit committee and he was never interested in anybody's name that came before them because he had his buddy preaching. Well, it turns out he went on vacation. And so while he was gone for a month on vacation, him and his wife, the church started moving and got a hold of people to ask who would be a good suggestion. And Wayne Isgriggs suggested my name. And during that month time that this man and his wife was on vacation, they called me as their pastor and I accepted. So he came back from vacation and discovered that he had been usurped and that this new young fat kid was the pastor of his church. And immediately conflict started. I'm not going to go into great details about the conflict, but it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I was plagued. My parents were defamed. All kinds of accusations and rumors, and every effort there was to disrupt the services and disrupt me. I was told that while I couldn't hear them when I was preaching in this big empty building, they would be back there making disparaging comments for the people in the 2 or 3 pews around them to hear while I was preaching. It was just that disruptive. So it was pretty discouraging. I was very discouraged. I did not know if I had the skills, the knowledge, or the ability to fix this problem with this church. So now the day of the vision. I had a vision, just as the best I can explain it. I didn't realize I was having a vision at the time, but let me tell you what happened. So it was time for Sunday morning worship, and we're running maybe 40 at this point. I mean, we've really grown a few. And we had a college student, I think, that was leading the music, and we had like 5 people in the choir. It's really tough when you got 5 people in a choir, and again, about 35 people, 40 people sitting in the congregation. And the first hymn back then was, the worship was very organized. The first hymn, you stood, and then I would lead in an opening word of prayer, and then I'd tell the congregation they could be seated, and then we would have another hymn, and then after that you would stand, and it'd be the offertory hymn, and then the sermon and the invitation. So we were in the second hymn, which is a sit-down hymn. So I'm sitting in the chair on the platform where I'm supposed to be. The 5 choir members are behind me, and this young guy is leading the music. And I forget what hymn it was. But as we began to sing the hymn, I looked down at my hymnal and looked down at the words. And then, of course, I knew the hymn, so I looked back up. When I looked back up, the whole room had changed. Now, it was the same room, but there was the first floor was filled, and the church had a balcony, and there was maybe 15 people, 20 people in the balcony. And so I'm like, what happened? I looked back down real quick, and I'm like, what's going on? And then I looked back up, and I looked over my shoulder, because up on the wall was, past the choir, was a plaque that they put down, you know, what the attendance was in Sunday school and that sort of stuff. And I looked, and it was 200 and something. I don't know what it was, but it was 200 and something. And so again, I looked back down, and I looked down at my hymnal, and I'm like, and the you know, the song's still going on, the guy's directing the music, and I'm like, what is happening to me? I thought, okay, I'm dreaming. This is a dream. But then I'm like, no, I don't think it's a dream, because, you know, you don't normally know it's a dream when you're dreaming. And so I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I fell asleep during the hymn, and I need to wake up, because I'm sitting up here snoring, and I'm the pastor of the church getting ready for this the service. And all these thoughts are going through my head. And I looked down, and then I looked back up, and everything was back to normal. There was, you know, we were, the third verse of the hymn, there was like 35, 40 people out here in this big empty building, and my little choir of 5 behind me, and this college student leading the music. I can't tell you, I was shocked. I did not know what happened to me, but I knew something. I knew this. I knew that it was something that involved the Holy Spirit, that involved God. I knew it was a spiritual event that had taken place in my life. And so I just got up, tried to recoup. We had the offering. I gave my sermon. But when my sermon got done, by that time, even while I'm preaching, my mind is working out what happened to me. Something happened. I didn't fall asleep. So the best I could figure is this must be what a vision is like. The Lord's given me a vision. What does it mean? What do I do with this? And so the only thing I could think to say at the end of the service was, I have something very important to share with the congregation tonight. I encourage you to be here. It's important. It's kind of difficult for me, but I'm going to share it tonight, and I just invite you to be there for this announcement I have. And then I closed out the service. Well, I'm an hour and a half away from Kansas City, and my pastor, Pastor Max Morris of Redbridge Baptist Church, I'm like, I've got to see this man. He was my mentor. He helped me when I was in high school preparing to be a minister, and I've got to go. So it's an hour and a half to Kansas City, an hour and a half back. And of course, I had evening services to do. I knew he had evening services to do as well. But I called him. I said, Max, I need to see you. And he goes, oh, okay. I said, I'll be there in less than 2 hours. He goes, okay, I'm at the house. I dashed up. I sat down in the living room and I said, Max, this is what happened to me. It's the most incredible. I don't know. What do you think this is? And he said, well, you know what? It sounds to me like you've had a vision. He goes, I've never had one, but that's exactly what it sounds like. God gave you a vision. So I'm like, what is it about? And he goes, what do you think it's about? And I told him, I said, well, I'm so discouraged at this church. I've actually been thinking about quitting. It's a mess, and there's this couple, and you just can't beat them. They're beating me down. And he goes, well, maybe this was the Lord trying to tell you to stay, and if you stick with it, this is what you'll see one day: the full congregation, a full choir, and things healthy and doing well. So I got in my car and started driving back and talking to the Lord. And the more I prayed about it, the more I realized this is what took place. He was giving me a vision of the future of that church if I stayed as their pastor. It's sort of an assurance that things were going to work out, that I could turn this around, that I could build this church back. So that's Sunday night. Now, normally you'd have maybe, if you had 40 on a Sunday, you'd maybe have 20 on a Sunday night. And so I was really surprised when I walked out for the Sunday evening service, and it wasn't a packed house because, of course, again, this building could hold easily 250, 300. But there was all 35, 40 people there. Everybody from normally would attend Sunday morning was there. And they were there because I had made that announcement. So I shared with them what took place. I'm like, you may judge me, you may say I'm charismatic or something, I don't know, but this took place. This is what happened in me, and I feel that God wants me to share it with you. And that's all I got to say about it. I think it's going to happen. I think it was given to us, given to me, so I would know that the day was going to come. We would have this people if I just stuck it out here. And then I preached my sermon, and we had the closing hymn, and a lot of people came up. Most everybody thought I was going to resign, because the church was in this conflict and the turmoil and all that kind of stuff. And so many of them wanted me to know that they was glad I was going to be here, that I was made a commitment to stay, that I wasn't resigning. But nobody really talked about the vision. I think they were a little nervous about it. I mean, we got a pastor, this young guy and he's just had a vision and now given a prophecy about the future of the church and that we're going to hit these numbers. And so I just went about my business. Now, the church did turn stuff around. I mean, I didn't go after this man and his wife at all. I just tried to love them and tried to lead as pastor and let them just take their shots at me and do their best. And that's what they did. They took a lot of shots at me and they did their best. And the church itself stood up for itself and stood up for not being bullied and not being ruled by this couple. And so slowly he was rotated off as a deacon. When it came time to have the yearly nomination for the moderator, somebody else was selected. Somebody else became the treasurer. He was nominated and took that position. And so slowly they lost the positions in the church. And we had 214 people in Sunday school about a year and a half after that event. The church grew, and we baptized. The first time I baptized somebody, they had hip waders. Now, I was a country preacher before, and you're thinking I'm probably still a country preacher in this church, but this town had a Walmart, so we didn't consider itself country. And the first time I baptized somebody, I'm like, they got these waders. I guess I'll try them, So I put the waders on and stepped into water, and those waders had been laying in the same position for so many years. No one had been baptized. They had cracks, and it just leaked like a sieve. And so while I'm baptizing, I'm filling up with water. So I have to get out of the baptistry. I have to run next door because the parsonage was right next door. And this was all downtown Versailles. The jail was right there. There was the police station. There was a funeral home across the street. And we're right down off the square, 1 block. And so they had a house. And so I ran next door, changed clothes, and come back and finished the service. I had a lot of great memories there. But we did. We grew. We baptized people, and our highest attendance was 215. And I'm going to make the commitment that next podcast, I'm going to tell you about that day we had 215, because it also actually involved a miracle that impacted the city in its own way. And I don't think I've ever told the vision story before, and I don't think I've ever told this story, except, I tell my wife these stories, but nobody else, because it sounds like it's kind of unbelievable. I don't want to project that I'm something that I'm not, because I didn't. These are just things the Lord did. And this vision was one that He gave me to assure me. And I made my commitment. I stayed, and He blessed. And we saw the growth, and we saw the church full again. And it was wonderful to see that building, people in the balcony. It was just disheartening, actually, and hard to step into the church and see a big empty building with just a few people there. So God blessed us. I was there for, I don't know, many years. That was the last church I pastored until while I was pastoring that, the Lord led me to start Christian Computing Magazine. And a year later, I resigned and became a church planter because I could no longer be a full-time pastor while I was building the magazine up, which I did then for 27 years. So this goes way back in my time history, but it was a very impactful time in my life, and I wanted to share with you on our podcast. If you like these podcasts, please like, share, and subscribe, and that way you'll get the future podcasts. And I'll tell you about the day we had 214, why, what we did, and how God actually did a miracle on that day as well. All right. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you like it. God bless and have a great day.